This is my Topo Toppers Mesa camper on my 2011 Nissan Frontier. The interior is completely a DIY build that I put together over the course of some months last year. I've now been using it in this state for a year. In this video, I'm going to talk about some things I wish I had done a little bit differently. Now in this video, I'm not going to cover everything that I've done in here. I already have a video that covers in comprehensive detail everything about the build. But you know how after you've put something together and started using it for a while and you realize, oh, I wish I'd done this differently, or I wish I'd done that differently. That's what I'm going to cover in this video. Probably the biggest disappointment with the way all this turned out is purely superficial, in that I used vinyl wallpaper over rigid foam insulation to make my interior walls here. And in theory, it was a great idea because had I used foil back rigid insulation, it would have worked fine. Instead, I used the pink foam because I thought it was going to provide a smoother surface behind, but the pink foam immediately began off-gassing behind the vinyl self-adhesive wallpaper and making these bubbles everywhere. And believe me, I have tried every single thing you're going to suggest. I have poked them, I have inserted glue into them. The bubbles are just there. The only solution here is to redo this. Now, had I used the foil backed insulation, which was very close to the same price, there was no like economic reason to choose one over the other. I did do one test piece on the foil back insulation, and more than a year has gone by and it has not bubbled in the least. Every time I get into this camper and I look at these walls with the bubbling wallpaper, I kick myself for not having just used the foil backed insulation. Now, the next thing I wish I had done differently are these lights that I put in here. Now overall, I am happy with the lighting design that I came up with in the camper, where I've positioned some regular LEDs and where I have positioned some red LEDs that I use when I get up in the middle of the night. That has all worked out great. It's just that these lights are too harsh and the light is too cold, and I should have spent a little bit more money on nicer LED lights for the regular lighting around the camper. Those of you who are new to my channel may not know I do everything on as tight of a budget as possible. When I built this camper out inside, much of it is reused material, salvage material. I was nonetheless willing to spend some money to make this right for me. I bought all these different electrical components so I could really wire this up right. And I don't know about you, but what happens for me is if I'm working on a project for months and I'm buying stuff and I'm buying stuff and I'm buying stuff, seeing all those dollars going out in a very short period of time, and just automatically I find myself looking for ways to be a little bit more frugal. And so I bought very inexpensive lights. Now they work, they do what I want them to do, is they've got switches right on them, so I can just reach up, you know, turn on, turn off a light wherever I need it. But these lights are annoyingly harsh. The color temperature could definitely be warmer. I really wish I had just spent a little bit more money and got some nicer lights. And in fact, I probably will end up replacing them. So that was not money saved at all, because this is money lost and I'm gonna have to spend the more money on better lights anyway. My next regret is how I designed the drawers here. Now this cabinet has worked out great. It has been fantastic to have. I've got all my clothes stored in here. I've got extra water. I've got miscellaneous items that I use regularly in the camper right up in here. And a little table here that pops into this spot right here. And the top provides me sort of a counter surface that I can stand and work on. Sometimes I make coffee in here. Overall, really happy with how this turned out. I designed these drawer faces with sort of these rounded corners. I just wanted to give it a little nicer finished look. I had seen that in some other builds. I thought it was a nice look with the rounded corners and then simply using holes as pulls. The problem with that is that you end up losing some space because the drawer needs to be narrower than the drawer face. And then on top of that, because I wanted to create these various alignments within the surface, because I thought it would look nicer, I've ended up with dead space in between these drawers. In fact, between these two bottom drawers, there's like 6 inches of dead space, when that could have been much more efficiently utilized. It's been fine. I haven't had any issues with getting everything I need in here for up to like a week-long trip. Ultimately, it was dumb. No one can really see this from out there, only me. And if I had, you know, made this in a manner that was more efficient, I don't think that sitting in here I would have been disappointed looking at it. In fact, I sit in here and I look at it and I think to myself, man, that was dumb. I could have used that space a lot more efficiently. My little couch bench thing that I've put in here has worked out great. In fact, it was the very first component that I built because I knew I'd want to use it right away. I like to take a nap every afternoon after lunch, and this is my spot where I take a nap. This is also my spot where I just sit and hang out once I get into the camper, but before I'm ready to go to bed. This has worked out great. I have my power station that runs all of the electrical stored in here, and I've got some other storage in the other area of the bench. Down in the end here, I have my air compressor mounted and hardwired, so when I'm ready to air up my tires, I just open that up and I can air up all my tires right from there. All that has worked out great. The only thing about this, and this is not so much a regret because I can do something about it, is I just have this piece of foam. This was my mattress on an earlier build in my previous topper, and I just have this blanket that I already had kind of wrapped around it. Well, when I need to get at anything in here, like this storage compartment, or I've got a compartment here where I access the wiring for the camper, or I have to take this in and out for any reason, or, you know, it slips off a little bit on the trail, what happens is this blanket comes untucked and it looks terrible. It drives me nuts. And I spend so much time fiddling around with tucking this blanket back in. Because this was all stuff that I had and I was already spending, you know, plenty of money on various components of the camper, I just couldn't bring myself to have something custom made. There are companies, and you can even find them on Amazon, that will make you cushion exactly to the dimensions you want with the fabric that you want already on it. I think I'll probably still do that at some point. I was happy with how the look of the blanket and this little rug that I found and this pillow that I found, I was happy with how that all kind of came together. But messing around with this floppy blanket when it comes out and having to constantly tug it back in drives me nuts. So inside this cargo door on the side of the camper, within that tall cabinet that we saw inside, I have built space that is essentially my kitchen. I have these, you know, little pull-out drawer things, and I've got my pots and pans. My water jug just sits there like that and is purely gravity fed, so I don't have to worry about any pumps or anything like that. And I use this tire table right here with a burner that I built into it to complete the kitchen. I do have a 270-degree awning that wraps over this part of the truck. My fridge for years has always ridden right in here, so all of my food prep is right in here underneath my awning. This has worked out great. My knives and utensils and things like that are on this magnetic tool strip I put up there. Now, when I first showed that last year, people said, oh, your stuff's gonna fall off of that when you're on bumpy roads. Nope, everything has stayed on this perfectly. That has worked out fabulously. But a couple of things that I wish I had done a little bit differently here. First of all, I've been using this water jug for some years, and it's so simple, it works great. It holds 4 gallons of water, and I have another water container inside that holds another 2.5 or so. I have plenty of water with me for most week-long trips. So I designed my kitchen cabinetry around accommodating this so it can sit upright when I'm driving, and I just set it there like that at camp. It works great. Turn it on, I turn it off, I get a little water on the side of the truck. That doesn't bother me. Now, in a previous build, I had a like RV style 7-gallon water reservoir that I had sort of built in and tucked away in a side. And that required a little bit of plumbing because you had to have a fill spout and you had to have a vent, and then you had to have an outlet of some sort. Now, I was using that just on a gravity basis also. When I put this together, I had been so focused on using this, I didn't really think about that water tank that I already had. And I was just looking at this the other day and realizing I have plenty of room here. I could have built it in here. It wouldn't have been that difficult to plumb a spigot that came out here on this side, as well as one serving the inside, because I like to have access to water once I'm inside the camper as well. My concern is that this thing is eventually going to fail in some way. And they don't make these anymore. I have looked and looked and looked for this jug, and it's the best water jug I have ever bought, and I don't understand why they don't make them anymore. When this fails, the problem is I've got this weird sort of hexagonal space built into my cabinetry here that accommodates this specific water jug. So that's going to have to get torn apart and something different will have to be done. Had I thought that through a little further, it would not have been that difficult to integrate that RV water tank that I already had. And I think it probably would have made more efficient use of the space, and I could have had a little bit more storage for my kitchen stuff. Also here in the kitchen, I have mixed feelings about the tire table. Now I made a dedicated video about this, so I won't go into a lot of detail. I'll put a link in the description below to my video about this tire table. I was originally trying to create a DIY table that would fit inside of this cargo door that I would pull out, and it was going to use the tire as part of the support for it so that it was, you know, there was just less moving parts. I ended up running into some difficulties putting that together, and I was on a time constraint where I needed to get off on a trip halfway across the country. So I gave up on that project and then just pulled the trigger on the tire table instead. Now, had I really thought that through, I didn't need this table to sit on the tire. I did that because I had been previously thinking about using the tire, and when I couldn't get that to work myself, I just bought the commercially available version. Now, this thing is heavy and a little awkward and fiddly to set up and break down, and I find myself looking for excuses not to use it. So I carry a little backpacking stove, and sometimes I just use that instead of using the built-in burner in my tire table. Now, what I could have done instead of buying this is simply buy a metal folding table. I still could have built in a burner, which I love. I love having this burner built into my table because I set up my table and my stove is already integrated. That's been great. And an advantage of just a normal folding metal camp table of some sort is that I could put it right here where, you know, next to my kitchen, but if I wanted to, I could put it over there. I could put it over there. You know, I'm not necessarily pinned to this spot. Tire table does have some advantages in that because it doesn't rely on the ground, it relies on the tire. You can set this up and have it be super sturdy. And I mean, this thing is very, very sturdy, sturdier than any folding camp table that you can get. You bump into this, it is not going to tip over. Nothing's going to fall off of it. If you've got uneven ground, if you've got sand, mud, whatever, there's never any concern about legs sinking into the ground, the thing being wobbly, tippy, whatever. It's super sturdy and works on any sort of ground, which even right here in this campsite, the ground here is not even at all. So I don't hate this by any means, and I'm certainly going to keep using it because I now have it. I do think if I had it to do over again, I would just get some sort of nice metal folding camp table and build my stove into that instead. And that is it. Those are really the only things that when I'm out using this, I wish I had done differently. And none of them are like, you know, terrible game changers. None of them are bad enough that I feel compelled to do something about it right away. Everything is functional. It does work just fine. I've been using it, like I said, this way for a year. I love this camper. This has been miles and miles above any other way that I've camped in my entire life. I love that with this capable, compact little truck, I can go just absolutely anywhere I want to, find amazing places to camp, quickly set up camp, quickly break down camp, super comfortable space to hang out in, comfortable to sleep in. Overall, I could not be happier with this setup for the type of exploring and camping that I like to do. Few little details I wish I had done a little bit differently. Not the end of the world. I will put links in the description below to a few other videos that I referenced. If you have any questions about any of this, go ahead and post them in the comments below. And thank you for watching.